Good afternoon, all, and welcome to the 2022 New Jersey Attorney General's Town Hall in partnership with the Victims of Crime Compensation Office, the VCCO, and the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence. Again, my name is Claribel Bautista, and I am the Deputy Director for the VCCO. The VCCO has been committed to its mission in providing assistance to victims that have incurred expenses due to violent crimes. Today, we are honored to collaborate with other community agencies and partners to increase awareness on the services and compensation available to all victims, specifically domestic violence victims. We thank you for joining us and ask you to share this valuable information that we're about to share with you today with others that may benefit from these services. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce to you our Acting Attorney General, Matthew J. Plotkin.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Claribel, for that introduction. And of course, thank you to VCCO Executive Director Mary Ellen Bonsper and the whole VCCO office for your work, obviously in organizing today's town hall, but also in your work that you do every day on behalf of victims throughout our state. I thank you for that. And thank you as well to the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence for your partnership today. It's appreciated, and today's events are so important. We have an extraordinary lineup of speakers and panelists who are experts in this space and who will expand on the topic of the statewide services available to domestic violence victims and survivors here in New Jersey. I would like to discuss before that the importance of this work and share a few ways that we're tackling this epidemic of violence in New Jersey. When I assumed office, I stated that one of my top priorities was combating violence, in particular, combating domestic and sexual violence. And I said this for a number of reasons, not first and foremost, obviously, the trauma that victims endure when they are victims of sexual or domestic violence obviously lasts a lifetime. These acts threaten public safety, and as I said, they perpetuate cycles of trauma and violence that are all too prevalent. Second, these acts drive homelessness and can lead to substance use disorders, alcoholism, and other detrimental health risks. And lastly, they not only impact the physical, emotional, and mental well-being of an individual, but these acts affect their families, their communities, children, and so many other loved ones around them. So these acts of violence just have such a deep impact on people's lives and those around them. As leaders, advocates, and service providers, it is our obligation to enhance structural supports and systems of care for victims and survivors. We have to ensure that they have the economic power to rebuild their lives and the emotional and mental capacity to lead healthy lives. And one of the most effective ways we can do this is by investing in life-saving services. Last year, we invested $2 million to provide statewide emergency housing services for victims of domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual assault, and gun violence. And we know that housing stability for these victims is so critical, particularly in the immediate aftermath of an attack. We also announced that we've implemented more than 300 extreme risk protective orders, which have been issued by the state, likely preventing countless gun violence related tragedies and deaths. That's a significant number. And because we know that if an abusive partner has access to a gun, a domestic violence victim is 5 times more likely to be killed. In fact, 2/3 of women killed by an intimate partner are killed with a gun. So this landmark ERPO law, which was signed into law by the governor, has provided countless family members and law enforcement officers with an essential tool to keep dangerous weapons out of the hands of those who are a serious danger to themselves or to others. And it's a tool that we are constantly working with law enforcement to use more aggressively and more frequently. And of course, I have to highlight the tremendous work that VCCO does, as they remain an incredible resource for victims and survivors by providing much needed financial benefits and working closely hand in hand with our state Office of Victim Wellness Advocacy within the Division of Criminal Justice to help enhance victim services across our state. we're doing a lot, as you can see, to make sure that no one confronts the trauma and pain caused by this violence. We're working hard to improve systems of reporting, and we're using the full force of the law. And I pledged you that we will continue to use the full force of the law to hold abusers accountable. But of course, we have to do more. And this town hall is a testament to our commitment, as well as to my own commitment as acting Attorney General to these efforts. And I thank each and every one of you for being here and for the work that you do every single day on behalf of victims throughout our state and survivors of sexual and domestic violence. I look forward to working with you, and consider our office and me a partner in your efforts. And I will turn it back over now, but I look forward to a very productive and thoughtful discussion.
Acting Attorney General Placken, thank you for making it a priority to raise awareness about domestic violence, statewide services, and resources available for victims throughout New Jersey. My name is Ramona Peterson, Supervisor of Investigators for the Victims of Crime Compensation Office. Two of the most difficult challenges a domestic violence victim has to face is the reality of admitting they are a victim, and the second is reporting the abuse to law enforcement. Our first guest speaker, Erin Diaz, bravely agreed to share her emotional story of the painful abuse that she suffered as a domestic violence victim. Erin, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin, and this is my story. 2007 was the year my abuser entered my life. The abusive behavior was there in the beginning, but the signs were very subtle. Abusive people can be very charming. He waited 6 years before he gave me my first beating in 2013. Our 4-month-old son was sleeping in the other room. My head was slammed into a wall. I was bitten and hit. I urinated in my pants. He was arrested, and I dropped the charges because he promised me he would change. And I'm the kind of person that always tries to find the good in people, and I believed that promise. Things improved for about 7 months until he beat me again. This time he beat me while our 11-month-old baby watched and screamed. My rotator cuff on my right shoulder was torn, and no red flags were raised because I did not tell the truth to my doctor. The emotional and physical abuse was getting worse and worse. I hid the black and blue bruises. I was ashamed. I told no one. He would threaten me with his fists in his face quite often, and I felt trapped. Now let's fast forward to May 7th, 2020. I was punched over 50 times with closed fists, kicked to the ground numerous times, and a knife was put to my throat while our 6-year-old watched in horror. This was by far the worst beating he gave me. Our son was pulled from the couch and thrown to the floor a few times. Both my son and I urinated in our pants. I thought I was going to die, and I was begging him not to kill me. I heard the police entering the building, and I knew at that moment that we were going to survive. He was arrested, and this time I filed for divorce and an FRO. I had been physically abused for 7 years and emotionally abused for about 13 years. The police and DCP&P told me about VCCO. Ramona Peterson, Supervisor of Investigators from VCCO, has helped us find resources to support both our growth and our healing. She always finds time to listen and shows compassion during this most vulnerable time for us. She encourages me, she listens to my story, and she continues to do so. I will be forever grateful and would like to one day serve as an advocate for women and children that are impacted by abuse. I see the damage that this has done to my child's innocence and my spirit. The trauma even impacts my son's ability to learn. He has an IEP for school, and he qualified with what they call other health impairment, which is due to the PTSD and anxiety that he suffers with. Both of us struggle with the PTSD and anxiety to this day. And I'm not sure how long it will take for us to find peace, but do understand we will not give up until we are free. Thank you for listening to my story.
Erin, thank you again for your courage. I hope your story inspires others to come forward and seek help. Our next guest speaker is Selena Shuter, Victim Witness Coordinator at the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office. Selena?
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to say thank you, Erin, for sharing such a powerful story, and we are honored to have you here today. My name is Selena Shuter, and I'm the Victim Witness Coordinator with the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office. And I want to thank the Office of the Attorney General, Acting Attorney General Plankin, VCCO, and the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence for holding this event. It is events such as this that shed a light on a topic that has often been kept in darkness. Domestic violence is a macro crisis and a threat to our society. And we want you to know that there is help available in your very own communities. The Office of Victim Witness Advocacy, or more commonly referred to as Victim Witness, is available in all of the 21 county prosecutor offices in New Jersey. The primary goal of Victim Witness is to assist victims and surviving family members by providing information, advocacy, and referrals while upholding the New Jersey Crime Victims Bill of Rights. These rights afforded to victims and surviving family members ensure that you, the victim, are treated with dignity, compassion, and respect by the criminal justice system. Each victim witness unit is composed of specially trained advocates to assist you and your families with a host of services that will empower you and allow you to heal. Victim Witness is such a specialized unit within the prosecutor offices because we respond to crime victims' concerns following their victimizations. We provide safe environments for victims to tell their stories to specially trained advocates that validates victims and their needs. We do this by providing information, assistance, accompaniment, and support to prepare victims for their encounter with the criminal justice system, as well as make any appropriate referrals to meet a victim's physical, emotional, financial, and other needs resulting from their victimization. It is with these services and supports that victims can better cope with the system's expectations, therefore creating a strong survivor. I thank you again for this time, and please refer to our contact information at the end of the event.
Selena, thank you for providing the information about the services and resources available. Services and resources are available in all 21 counties in New Jersey. Up next is Mary Ellen Bonsper, Executive Director for Victims of Crime Compensation Office. Director Bonsper will provide behavioral insight about domestic violence victimization. Mary Ellen.
Thank you, Ramona. Good morning. My name is Mary Ellen Bonsper, and I am the Director of the Victims of Crime Compensation Office. I want to thank you for joining us today at our town hall meeting as we discuss domestic violence, recognizing the signs of domestic violence, and where to go for help. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence is the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and/or any other abusive behavior as a part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by a current or former intimate partner, household member, or individual in a dating relationship against another. It can include physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, economic abuse, and emotional abuse. The frequency and severity of domestic violence can vary dramatically. However, domestic violence is always comprised of one individual's consistent efforts to maintain power and control over another. Domestic violence affects individuals and families in every community, regardless of age, economic status, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or nationality. Domestic violence can result in physical injury, psychological trauma, and in severe cases, even death. The devastating physical, emotional, and psychological consequences of domestic violence can cross generations and last a lifetime. So, why do so many domestic violence incidents go unreported every year? Domestic violence happens to people who are in an intimate relationship, people who are married, living together, or dating. The violence is perpetrated by someone you care for and love, which can make it more challenging to accept. You may have to build a life with this person, may share family and friends, or have children together. The abuse may not have occurred at the beginning of the relationship, but months or years later. And when the abuse first does occur, it's easy to make excuses. They were just having a bad day at work, or they had too much to drink. Another reason domestic violence goes unreported is because it's not always easy to recognize. The physical violence is easy to identify, but what about more subtle forms of abuse, such as emotional abuse? They put you down and make you feel bad about yourself. They're extremely jealous, even with you spending time with your friends and family. They watch everything that you do, where you go, and who you see. They take your money, or they refuse to give you money. They forbid you from working. They force or manipulate you to have sex or perform sexual acts. They threaten to hurt your children, your family, your pets. They make you take drugs or alcohol. Domestic violence also goes unreported because of fear. Fear of retaliation if you do report it. Fear that no one will believe you or that you will lose custody of your children. Maybe you are ashamed or embarrassed, or you're worried that you won't be able to financially support yourself without their help. I am here to tell you that you are not alone and that help is available. There are many resources for assistance. Today, you will hear from advocates throughout the state who have dedicated their lives to helping domestic violence victims and about the services that they can provide to you. Please listen to what they have to say. Even if we reach one person, this event will have been a success. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Pamela Jacobs, Executive Director for the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence, who will be moderating today's panel discussion. Pamela.
Thank you, Mary Ellen, and thank you to the VCCO office and victim witness units for all of the services that you provide to survivors across the state. Thank you, Attorney General Platkin, for your commitment to ensuring that survivors and the advocates who serve them have the resources and support that they need. And thank you, Aaron, for sharing a piece of your story with us. I'm Pamela Jacobs. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence. We are a statewide coalition that supports and represents 35 domestic violence programs and culturally specific organizations across New Jersey. I want to tell you just a little bit about what we do at the coalition, and then I'm going to invite our panelists to come on and share a little more about the services that they offer across New Jersey as well. So at the coalition, we provide training on a variety of topics related to preventing and responding to domestic violence. We have a prevention project, including our Men of Courage network, which is men working across New Jersey to end domestic violence as well. We do a lot of work on policy initiatives, both at the state and federal level. We have outreach and capacity building support to help strengthen and sustain culturally specific services, as well as services for the most marginalized survivors in our state. Our legal team provides training and support to advocates and attorneys on legal issues impacting survivors and their families, as well as a legal representation project to connect survivors with attorneys and family law proceedings and other legal issues. We have a deaf advocacy project working to ensure that deaf survivors have access to the services and the resources and support that they need and deserve. And then finally, our housing and economic justice team is working to expand financial opportunities for survivors, expand housing opportunities, including a domestic violence housing first project that provides rental and relocation assistance to survivors. And that is a project that's supported by the Attorney General's office. Our goal at the New Jersey Coalition is to end domestic violence and all forms of oppression, which we know are very much connected. In order to do that, we need to ensure that all services are inclusive, equitable, accessible, and meaningful for all survivors, especially those who experience the most barriers and are the most marginalized. So to tell you a little more about the services that are offered across the state, I know we have many program representatives here, and it was great to see you all in the chat. To tell you a little more about the services, I'm going to invite our panelists to come on. And then we'll tell you a little more about the organization that they're here representing, as well as services that they provide. John Eileen, would you like to get started?
Sure. My name is John Eileen Coghlan. I'm the Director of Domestic Violence Services at Women Rising. That's in Hudson County. Besides domestic violence services, which is shelter, 24-hour hotline, counseling service, support accompaniment, we have 4 other programs as well. We have permanent housing, which is Village and Family program that provides 22 chronically homeless families with permanent housing support services and enable them to succeed and thrive. We also have Workforce Development, a full service resource and employment center, including assistance with job searches, workplace readiness, and industry specific training programs. Scheduled classes and walk-in services are also available. We have Youth and Family Services, which is crisis intervention and management, in-home and on-site supportive counseling, parenting education, supervised visitation, family activities, information, and referral. And lastly, we have Healthy Women, Healthy Families, which is a partnership with Maternal Child Health dedicated to decreasing disparities in healthcare for women and children. A special emphasis is placed on reducing infant mortality rates and improving outcomes in the community. Services include outreach, education, screening, referrals, and case management. Thank you.
Eileen, thank you. How about Walter?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Walt Pearson. I'm the coordinator for the Woodbridge Township Domestic Violence Response Team. We work alongside the police department anytime a victim does come into the police department. What we do is we help provide them with resources. We find out exactly what is going on, what kind of domestic violence history they may have had. Talk to them about some of the options that they have, such as a restraining order. If they do want a restraining order, we certainly help them find legal representation if they need it. But beyond that, we also fund educational programs in the township at both the middle schools and the high schools. We work at community events. We provide a website and information to victims, survivors, and the community at large.
Thank you, Walt. Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise Ragusa, and I am a member of the Woodbridge Township Domestic Violence Response Team also. So I just want to tell you a little bit about when a victim comes into our police department, and sometimes they're not forthcoming with their real situation that happened, and it's up to us to very carefully, very gently, very compassionately talk to them and get the details out of them of what exactly happened to them, because that's what we need. If they're going to get a TRO, we need that kind of evidence for the courts to grant it to them. And this is really hard for them to tell their story. They've probably never told it to anyone before. And it's just a matter of encouraging them and letting them know this isn't their fault. You haven't done anything wrong, and get what we need from them so they can have a TRO. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. We also have 2 representatives here from culturally specific organizations. Navneet, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Pam, and thank you to the Attorney General's office for creating this space to have this very important conversation. My name is Navneet Bala, and I am the Executive Director at Manavi. Manavi is the first South Asian domestic violence agency founded in the United States in 1985. So for the past 37 years, Manavi has been providing culturally specific and linguistically appropriate services to South Asian survivors of gender-based violence. Our mission is to end all forms of gender-based violence. We strive to address both the immediate needs of survivors as well as working towards establishing communities that are free from gender-based violence. Some of the services that we provide include culturally specific counseling, advocacy. We have a 24-hour multilingual hotline, which is staffed by many dedicated multilingual advocates. We have a South Asian culturally specific transitional home called Ashiana. And Ashiana is the only South Asian culturally specific transitional home of its kind on the East Coast, and a very unique and valuable service where we accommodate South Asian survivors and children. And we provide a range of culturally specific services at the transitional home, including culturally specific groceries, support groups. We also have a robust legal advocacy program where we provide comprehensive legal services in relation to immigration services, family legal services. We have an in-house attorney who also provides a range of legal services. We also do services such as medical and court accompaniments, transportation, because we recognize that the survivors that we serve have unique barriers and unique needs. In addition, we engage in community outreach and education, as well as engaging South Asian men, because we do feel it's important to engage men in the community and to do work on prevention. And finally, we also have a sexual assault services program. We are a dual service agency, so we support survivors of domestic violence as well as sexual violence. And although we were founded as a women's rights organization in 1985, we serve survivors of all gender identities and are an inclusive agency.
Thank you, Navneet. Rose.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for inviting us on and having an opportunity to speak on behalf of the survivors that we serve in the Camden County area and vicinity. Harambe was founded to promote the well-being of the Black and African American community, particularly the victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. We are 9 years old, and we have concentrated our efforts on doing a great deal of outreach work, reaching out into the community to talk to community organizations, governmental organizations, schools, and churches about just the prevalence of domestic violence and sexual assault. And also, we have done a great deal of work around developing healthy relationships, particularly with younger people, with teens and middle school age young people. More recently, our efforts we have been funded so that we can begin efforts to provide concrete services and direct services to survivors, such as legal advocacy support for them, to accompaniment to go with them to court. Also some supports that will allow us to help them get legal representation, to get restraining orders or custody of their children. A big portion of our work is around housing. Although we don't have a shelter, we are part of the hotel aggregator program, which allows us to find a safe space for survivors in hotels. And we have a good number of people who are reaching out to us to get into a safe space and out of the harm that they're in. We also provide individual counseling, support group. We have also a number of services such as help with connecting to jobs and job placement. And we work with other community providers in order to help with the job search. And more recently, we have had our own computer class here at the agency where survivors were able to come in and get 10 weeks of computer training at no cost to them. And one other thing that I will mention is that we're able to provide flexible cash assistance to help survivors with things like emergency food or clothing, help with buying uniforms or shoes when they need to go to work. We have been in a position to assist people with getting their licenses renewed so that they can begin working as in whatever profession they were in, getting recertification, all of those things that cost money. And typically those funds are just not available because they're an extra cost. And things like we have a survivor who is a vegan and can't get food from the food bank. So she needs to have some assistance with that while she's living in a hotel. So those are our primary services. But mainly we are there to support survivors and help them to understand that they are not in the situation by themselves anymore.
Thank you so much, Rose. And hopefully, as everyone can tell, there are such incredible services being offered across the state by domestic violence organizations and culturally specific programs to make sure that survivors have the resources that they need, as well as working to really prevent violence before it occurs. So if I could ask the panelists to come back on, in the interest of time, we're going to combine a couple of questions into one. If you could just quickly share, what are some red flags people should watch out for in their relationship, whether they're the one who is experiencing them or perhaps even the one who's perpetrating them, because there's help available for the people causing harm in their relationships as well. What are some red flags they should watch out for, and how could someone reach out to your organization for help? Let's go in the same order again. Joan Eileen, would you like to get started?
Sure. Some of the red flags would be jealousy, possessiveness, constantly want to be with you, by your side, that kind of thing. And also isolation, controlling, or blaming the abusive behavior on other things. Work, stress, other people made it happen, that kind of thing. So for Women Rising, you can reach us at womenrising.org or call our 24-hour hotline, which is 201-333-5700. And we serve the Hudson County area.
Thank you, Joan Eileen. Walter and Louise, would you like to add anything to the red flags, and then also share how victims and survivors could get in touch with you?
Sure.
Walter, you want to go ahead?
Oh, thank you. When it comes to red flags, I think Erin had said before, biggest issues are around power and control. And generally there is a cycle of violence, and anybody who is familiar with domestic violence as an advocate or as a service provider knows that there's an incident, there is a period where the abuser is promising that it'll never happen again. There's a lull, and then it happens again. But every time that it happens beyond that, the instances become shorter between them, and they become more severe. But as far as red flags, I mean, we look for a prior history of abuse in other relationships, any threats of violence, breaking or striking objects, any force during an argument. We find a lot of times that the abusers have been, as a child, exposed to domestic violence in their upbringing. And we found that that is a red flag, because what happens is they become the next abuser and or victim. So those are the types of things that we look for. We can be reached at the Woodbridge Police Station, which is at 1 Main Street in Woodbridge. We also have a website, which is woodbridgedbrt.org. We're on Facebook, and through either one of those, we can be reached by telephone or by email. Louise, did you want to add to that?
A couple things. Some of the warning signs of domestic violence are really very subtle, and you don't realize it. If you have an abuser who is always putting you down, but he says it in a joking way to start, you know, that might continue on for a while, and then the jokes get worse and worse. So it's the way domestic violence works. When you have an abuser, things start off very casually, most of the time. There are some that just abusers that just jump right in, but most of the time it takes a while to develop, you know, the sense of I'm the master and you are not. Many ways to show their, you know, superiority. They can, you know, want to check your mail all the time. As someone said, your paycheck goes directly to a certain bank account that you have no control over. He has control over the banking. So it all happens gradually and slowly most of the time. But it's very invasive. It's very disturbing. So, you know, it's just, you have to listen carefully to what people say they're feeling, and try and work back from there and find out, you know, what the problem is.
Thank you, Louise, with that. Navneet and Rose, would you like to add to maybe additional red flags people could look for, or how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. So I think the main piece here is power and control has been said earlier. So some of the red flags could be where the abuser invalidates you and invalidates your feelings. The abuser does not honor your boundaries. The abuser tries to control your actions and behavior on a day-to-day basis. And some examples could be controlling who you see, controlling what you wear, controlling where you go, controlling the amount of time you spend with your loved ones. Very often the abuser can control you by isolation, or even try to coerce you to try to spend time exclusively with them by using jealousy or love as an excuse. So I think, you know, as Louise was saying earlier, some of these signs may not be apparent early on in the relationship, but they are clear red flags. And anytime you feel that your actions or behavior is being controlled in any way, I think that would be a red flag. And the way to contact Manavi for our services would be, you can reach us at our 24-hour hotline, which is 732-435-1414. You can also email us at manavi@manavi.org. We are a statewide agency and have an office in New Brunswick, Paterson, and we'll also have an office in Jersey City shortly. You can also contact us via social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you.
Rose, go ahead.
One other point I'd like to make in terms of red flag, is particularly in the LGBTQI community, is being outed. The threat of being outed is frightening for many people who may only be out with their friends, may not be out at work, may not be out at church or school or other places. And so the threat of being outed, also a threat that if they're outed, then their children may be taken from them, any other number of horrible things that may occur. But again, it is all based under the concept of power and control. So this is a way of manipulating somebody and continuing to hold power over them by saying that this is the continued threat. And one other that I would share in terms of teenagers is the whole business of texting and sexting that can be used against you, but certainly that constant texting of someone, hundreds of texts that can be sent within a short period of time, that is a really harassment and becomes very, very emotionally abusive to individuals. Of course, any of these things unto themselves may not seem like much, so this is very often why they go ignored for a period of time, but it's usually combined with some of the things that the other panelists shared. Harambe can be reached at our number, which is 609-225-6936. We also are on Instagram and Facebook, and we are primarily serving the Camden County area, but touching in Gloucester and the surrounding area. So please feel free to call us.
Rose, and thank you so much to all of the panelists for not only being here today and sharing a bit of your expertise with all of us, as well as the services that you provide, but also just thank you for everything that you do every day to support survivors and their families, and also really working alongside us. It's an honor to be able to work with incredible advocates to not only respond to domestic violence, but ultimately our goal is, of course, to end it and stop it before it ever begins. So thank you all so much. And I hope that everyone who's watching sees that if you are experiencing anyone in your relationship who's hurting you, controlling you, manipulating you, scaring you, that you're not alone, that it's not your fault. And there are absolutely people in your area who can support you so that you can find the resources that you need. And also, if you're the person who may be doing these things in your relationship, there's absolutely help for you to begin on that journey to change as well. And for everyone who's watching, we all know someone who is being abused. We all know people who have been abused and have been able to escape from that abusive relationship. And we all know someone who is currently being abused. So I encourage you to reach out to your local program. I've put their information, the information on our website of where you can find a list of programs across New Jersey in the chat. I will share it there again. Please reach out to your local programs and find out how you can get involved, how you can learn more about what they offer, learn more about how you could possibly volunteer or donate or find a way that you can really get involved and partner with them to work to end domestic violence in your area as well. So again, thank you, panelists. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jason to learn a bit more about BCCO benefits.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason Delpesh. I'm an investigator with the Victims of Crime Compensation Office. I've been an investigator here in our office since about 2017. Prior to that, I was a victim witness advocate with the Essex County Prosecutor's Office here in Newark. So as you can imagine, I'm quite familiar with a lot of the things that domestic violence victims experience and have dedicated most of my professional life to helping them. So I wanted to begin our discussion as far as the kind of benefits that we can offer. First, before I want to get into that, I want to stress that we're a statewide agency. I think one of the misconceptions that are out there, at least I've come across, is that the services are just available here in Newark or available in Jersey City or in Camden. No, we are available in all 21 counties of the state. So let me just jump into that. I'm going to just begin our discussion as far as the benefits, going through some generally asked questions. The first question, can the BCCO help me pay attorney fees due to the crime? And the answer to that is yes. If a victim incurred attorney fees related to the crime, the BCCO can definitely help. The BCCO covers the costs, including but not limited to assistance with restraining orders, divorce proceedings, filing a public notice for divorce, usually in domestic violence cases, and any legal matter as a result of being being a victim of a crime that prompted your BCCO application. The attorney fees are payable at $275 an hour with a total maximum benefit of $10,000. Another question that comes up, will my attorney get paid for helping me complete the BCCO application? And the answer to that is yes. If you get help from an attorney to complete your BCCO application, the BCCO will pay the attorney at a rate of $275 per hour or 15% of the award, whichever one is less. The minimum award amount that we have for this benefit is $500. In both instances, the attorney or the victim would present an affidavit of service or a bill by hour statement that pretty much gives a line item description as far as what tasks were being performed, how much time was being spent, and the final cost of those tasks. Another question that we get, can I get paid for transportation expenses for attending a court hearing or trial? Absolutely, yes. The BCCO will pay you up to 31 cents per mile for a $10 a day maximum for court attendance. In situations where you may need to purchase a railroad or airfare ticket to attend a court proceeding, the maximum award that we have is $500 per person with an overall amount of $3,000 total to spend on that. In order to be eligible for this, however, you must submit proof that you attended a court proceeding, usually in the form of a letter from your assigned victim witness advocate or from the assistant prosecutor. So with that, I will turn it over to our Deputy Director, Claribel Batista, who will cover some additional benefits. Claribel.
Thank you, Jason. So this next section of BCCO benefits is going to focus on frequently asked questions for counseling and medical expenses. We'll begin with counseling expenses. Does the BCCO pay for counseling services? Yes, if a victim has suffered psychological trauma due to a crime. The VCCO can pay counseling services provided by a licensed therapist. The victim has the ability to select the licensed therapist to attend individual, group, or family sessions. Once a therapist is selected, the VCCO will send the practitioner a psychological assessment form to be completed and returned to the VCCO. Therapists are paid based on a VCCO statutory fee schedule. The maximum counseling compensation for a victim is $20,000, and a secondary victim can receive up to $7,000. Secondary victims could be family members or any person in close relationship that has suffered a psychological injury due to a crime. How are therapists reimbursed for their services? A therapist is able to receive direct payments from the VCCO once they have registered as a service provider with the New Jersey Department of Treasury. Once treatment is rendered to the victim or the claimant, an itemized bill along with the psychological assessment form will need to be submitted to the VCCO for review and consideration of payment. Can counseling services paid out of pocket be reimbursed by the VCCO? Yes, the victim or the claimant must submit an itemized bill with services rendered and proof of out-of-pocket payments. The VCCO's reimbursement amounts are based on a fee schedule and on therapist credentials. For example, the VCCO can reimburse for services provided by a licensed social worker at a rate of $90 per hourly session, a PhD at a rate of $110 per session, and a psychiatrist at a rate of $150 per session. In addition, the VCCO may also reimburse out-of-pocket co-payments after insurance. For more information on the fee schedule, please visit www.njvictims.org. Now we're going to move on to medical expenses. Does the VCCO cover my medical expenses? Yes. The VCCO can assist with crime-related medical expenses. As the payer of last resort, the VCCO may provide assistance after all other sources of payments are first considered, such as medical insurance or charity care. If a victim is uninsured, they must apply for hospital coverage by completing a charity care application at the hospital where they're receiving treatment. If approved, the hospital costs or bills may be covered up to 100%, and the victim may also receive a discount on physician services incurred at the hospital. If a victim or claimant has medical insurance, the medical bills must first be submitted to the subscriber's medical insurance carrier before it is submitted to the VCCO. The VCCO will pay the crime-related balances due after other sources are considered, and if the balance remains the patient's responsibility. If a victim or claimant is uninsured, the VCCO will send the crime-related bills out for review to determine the reasonable and customary amount the VCCO can pay. Providers are required to accept the VCCO payment as payment in full. What type of medical expenses does the VCCO cover? The VCCO will cover medical expenses including but not limited to hospital and physician services, prescriptions, medical supplies such as wheelchairs and walkers, rehabilitative services such as physical therapy and chiropractic services. And lastly, in certain situations, if a victim has suffered a catastrophic injury, they may be entitled to an additional $35,000 in benefits, in addition to the $25,000 available for these expenses. I will now turn it over to our investigator, Michael Habib, for additional benefits provided. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Habib. I'm an investigator with the Victims of Crimes Compensation Office. Today, I was going to discuss two topics that we get a lot of questions about regarding loss of support and loss of earnings. So one commonly asked question that we get for loss of support is, can I get help with loss of support after the offender leaves the home where we were financially sharing the costs? The answer to that question is yes. If a victim lived with the offender at the time of the crime, they may be eligible for loss of support to help pay for the expenses only if the offender was contributing to the household. The VCCO is a payer of last resort, so we do encourage all victims to pursue financial support through the courts. However, if the offender after the crime is incarcerated, has fled, he's a fugitive, or has ceased to provide support due to the incident, the office may assist. The victim would have to submit proof that the offender was supporting the household in several forms, either in providing a lease agreement, a mortgage statement, tax return, pay stubs, or any other relevant form that the victim can discuss with the investigator. As far as loss of support benefit, the maximum that this office can provide for a loss of support is $600 per week, which cannot exceed more than 48 months. Again, the office will see what attempts have been made through the courts to obtain support from the offender. The investigator handling the claim will review the documents, and based on a VCCO standard formula, we are able to determine whether a victim is eligible for losses on a case-by-case basis. Another commonly asked question is, can I get financial assistance for my child or my children because the offender stopped paying child support after the incident? The answer is yes. If the offender was paying child support and stopped paying in part or in full for a minimum of 2 weeks due to the crime, the VCCO may be able to assist with compensation. However, again, we ask that our victims do pursue the matter with the appropriate court and provide proof of child support for all future requests for this benefit type. Loss of earnings is another benefit I want to discuss. One commonly asked question is, I missed time from work due to the injuries that I incurred from the crime. Can I get paid for those lost wages? And of course, the answer is yes. If a victim suffered a physical or psychological trauma due to the crime, they may be eligible for loss of earnings. First criteria is that the victim must have been employed during the time of the incident. The other thing is the employer must submit a letter or complete an employer questionnaire, which we provide, that indicates the time the victim missed from work, the date that they returned to work, and whether or not they did or did not receive any pay during the period that they missed. Additionally, if a victim is eligible for short-term disability or private disability, the victim must apply through that benefit first, because as mentioned, the office is a payer of last resort. In addition, for loss of earnings, a victim must submit a letter from their treating physician that indicates the first date that they missed work, as well as when the victim can return to work. The maximum loss of earnings considered, again, is $600 per week with a maximum of 104 weeks. So just to recap, you must submit a letter from the employer as well as a letter from the treating physician in order to be considered for the loss of earnings. Now I'm going to turn this over to Supervisor of Investigators, Ramona Peterson.
Thank you, Michael. The next two questions that I'm going to address are relocation expenses and daycare expenses. The first question that we often get is the victim will express that they are fearful of the offender. And the question is, can the VCCO help me move away from the offender to protect my health and safety? The answer is yes. The VCCO can assist a victim with relocation expenses where there is a need to protect the health and safety of the victim and or his or her family. In many situations, the victim previously lived with the offender, or the offender knows where the victim resides and made threats to harm the victim and or his family. The maximum relocation benefit the VCCO can pay is $3,000. A victim or claimant can elect to move in state or out of state to a safe environment. The office may consider expenses including, but not limited to, the application fee, the first month's rent, security deposit, temporary shelter at a hotel, storage fees, and moving expenses such as boxes, truck rental, etc. If a victim qualifies, the VCCO can also assist with rental or mortgage differential. What that means is rental differential, if the victim's new rent is more than the old rent at the time of the crime, the VCCO can pay the difference. The benefit is paid on a limited basis until the maximum benefit has been reached, and further proof of rental payments may be requested beyond a 3-month period. Important things to remember when finding a new and safe place to live. Number one, the landlord must own the property being rented, and the landlord or its authorized agents or renter or representatives can rent the property. Number two, the landlord must provide a notarized letter or lease agreement to start the relocation process. Number three, the landlord can get paid directly, it's another question that's commonly asked, by agreeing to register their business tax identification number and related information online with New Jersey Department of Treasury. Once they register, the landlord will get a vendor number, and their website is www.njstart.gov. Number four, the VCCO can issue the landlord a pre-approval for the victim or claimant to stay at a hotel. In many instances, there's an emergency situation and the victim is trying to get away as quickly as possible. They have no place to go, so the VCCO can assist with a hotel stay. Number five, in situations where a victim or claimant paid the landlord directly and seeking reimbursement, the victim or claimant will be reimbursed for the first month's rent and related fees. However, the victim is entitled to the return of the security fee from the landlord when they move. If a victim incurred a financial hardship, the VCCO may reimburse the victim the security fee. Number six, VCCO has a victim services unit that may assist victims in finding temporary shelter if they're having a difficult time. They can contact the VCCO and they will be issued a list of resources that they can use. The next question that I have is regarding daycare or childcare expenses. And the question is, if a victim incurs daycare or childcare expenses because of the crime, can I get help? That answer is yes. The VCCO may reimburse for childcare or daycare expenses for a minor child 14 years old or less, or an adult when the need for such services is a direct result of the crime. The maximum reimbursement is $6,500. To qualify for this benefit, the victim will need to submit a written explanation why they need the services and how it's related to the crime. Second, if payment was issued to a provider, the victim will need to submit proof to the office for reimbursement consideration. If a victim did not pay for the services out of pocket, the daycare provider or organization may be required to register with the Department of Treasury to receive payments directly on an ongoing basis. For further information, you are encouraged to contact your investigator to determine what steps you need to follow. Thank you. We hope we answered many of your questions. VCCO Director Mary Ellen Bonsper will provide further contact information in her closing remarks.
Thank you, Ramona. First, I would like to thank Acting Attorney General Matthew Platkin, the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence, and our guest speakers and panelists for participating in today's town hall meeting. Also, a special thank you to you viewers for joining us today as we discussed how to recognize the signs of domestic violence and where you can go to get help. I hope this information has been useful to you. If you believe that you or somebody that you know has been a victim of domestic violence, please remember that you are not alone and that help is available. There are many resources for assistance. The contact information for the Victims of Crime Compensation Office, the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence, and the other organizations who participated in today's town hall meeting will be emailed to you at the end of this session. For more information about the Victims of Crime Compensation Office, please visit our website at newjerseyvictims.org, or you can call our main number at 973-648-2107 for further assistance. Again, thank you for joining us today, and please remember to stay safe.